folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at this guy right here, the Goonies adventure card game. Now, I was a huge Goonies fan back in the day. Loved the movie, had me rolling in the floors so much. Loved the movie. So when I saw this one coming down the pipe, I was really happy. I wanted to give it a try. I was really, really excited about it. On top of that, it had a couple of names on here that I was already familiar with. Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle, designers of Wasteland Express Delivery Service. Now, this one was put out before Wasteland Express Delivery Service, but liked that game, so hey, from the same minds, maybe I like this one as well. Let's get down to the table. I'll show you how it works, and then we'll come back a little bit after that with my final thoughts. And so here I have set up for you a 4-player game of the Goonies adventure card game. Now, as you can see here on these little cheat sheets that actually do come in the game, the players will win when the treasure at each of the 5 locations out here has been found and the ship has been discovered. So that's the way that all players win the game. This is a cooperative game. However, there are 3 ways that you can lose the game. For example, a 5th obstacle is added to any locations. These cards are called obstacle cards, and if there are, at any time, if there are 5 at any location, then everybody loses the game. A second way is if a 5th Fratelli card has been added to the encounter area, or if the last encounter card is drawn. So there are a number of different things working against you. Another thing to add here is that there aren't actual individual turns in the game. The group works together, so you have group turns. So on a turn, the group can take 4 actions as a team. Now, before we actually go through an actual turn, I wanted to show you the different kinds of characters that you can be in the game. There are 7 cards, each for one of the Goonies, the main guys in the movie: Mikey, Mouth, Chunk, Brand, Data, Andy, and Steph. And all of these they're double-sided. The reason they're double-sided is because you have a once per turn special ability that you can carry out. Then you also have a once per game. Once you use that once per game, you flip it over and it's gone. It basically has, you know, just a little quote from the movie, but your once per turn action is still there. So that's a clever use of a double-sided card. Mikey here, once per game, he can take up to 2 extra team actions. Here, once per turn, you can take an extra clear an obstacle action, and you would actually store the card here as a reminder that you have actually done it. Mouth here, his once per game is you may skip an escalation step, which is cool because escalation cards can be pretty hurtful. They can add cards to locations. They can add Fratelli cards. Just a really nasty situation altogether. His once per turn says when you move the Goonies by yourself, you may move a location adjacent to the target location instead. Chunk, his once per game says you may choose a discarded encounter card and resolve it again immediately. This is actually really cool because some of the encounter cards are actually good for you. So that's an important thing here. Also, when you clear an obstacle with a map or a doubloon symbol by yourself, you may draw a card, which is also important because card management and having the right cards at the right time is very important. Brand here says when you map a path by yourself, which is one of these things over here, you may draw a card and clear any obstacle. That's any time throughout the game. His once per game, though, says move a Fratelli from the encounter area to the top of the encounter deck. His Data's once per game says cancel the text of a Fratelli card. It is still placed in the encounter area, however. Once per turn, you can move any obstacle from this location to an adjacent location. So wherever the Goonies are, you can move an obstacle from that location to another. Andy, her once per game is you may clear 1 obstacle at any location. Really helpful. Her once per turn, you may use any music note card as any item. So these cards for Andy are actually wilds. Steph, her once per game is all players may draw one card. Pretty useful. Her once per turn is when you move the Goonies to any location by yourself, you may draw a card. So that's also useful as well. Now, as we're ready to start the game, we have to draw one card from the top of the deck and place it wherever it goes, and then that also allows us to map one of the locations over here so that you actually start with one of the locations mapped. And since it's a music note, we look at this one and we flip that over, and now this is mapped. The reason that that's important is because when you explore, we'll go over this a little bit more in detail, you're going to possibly be finding some of the treasure that's there, and you have to have a place to store the treasure once you get that. So it's important to map these, and it's a little bit of a tightrope there. But now that we've drawn that one card, we're actually ready to start the game. Now, on a turn, the group as a team can take 4 actions. Those 4 actions can be one of the following. The first one is move, where you actually take the Goonies and move them to one of the 5 locations that's out there. In order to do that, you simply have to play a card from your hand that matches the location to which you want to go. The second option that you have is clearing an obstacle, and that's where these icons come into effect. In order to clear, for example, this card right here, somebody would have to play a music note card from their hand. In order to play, to get rid of this obstacle, you would have to play 2 obstacle cards, one that has a music note and one that has a lantern on it. Now, the good thing about this is that you don't have to go in order from bottom to top. You could do this one first, and it can be from a number of different people. It doesn't have to be from just one person's hand. The next possibility is exploring a location. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, and that's where once all of the obstacle cards are gone from a location, you're able to explore. And that simply means you're going to draw the top token off of this pile and look at it. It's either going to be a booby trap or it's going to be a treasure. There are 2 booby traps and 1 treasure in each of these piles. The booby traps, of course, have a negative effect on them. As this one specifically says, add 1 obstacle to this location, immediately move the Goonies to location 3. So these are kind of hit and miss. You know that there are 2 booby traps and 1 treasure in each pile, but that's exploring a location. Another thing you can do is map a location out here. And it's really simple to do that. You simply have to play 3 of the same icon or symbol to map that location. And just like with everything else, you don't have to do that by yourself. The group can map a location together. And then the final option that you have as a turn is to remove a Fratelli card from the play area. In order to do that, you would have to play any 3 matching item cards, very much like mapping a location, and then you can remove that Fratelli card. Now, these encounter cards are what contain the Fratellis. Sometimes you'll see that there are buddies doing goofy things. So here's Chunk doing the truffle shuffle. Or it's a Fratelli card that has a negative thing on here. This one says draw 5 obstacles and add 1 to each location, and then place this in the encounter area. Now, this is a challenge deck. I just wanted to show this to you. This is simply in the game to add more difficulty to the game, so you might want to hold off using it. We're definitely not going to use it in this simple playthrough. So maybe we decide that we want to go to the skeleton organ first because Andy over here has 2 map symbols, and those are both necessary. And then we do have a couple of guys that have music symbols that are necessary to clear that out as well. We're going to use this card to move the Goonies to the skeleton organ location. And then as a group, so for example here, first of all, Andy is going to use this card and take away this obstacle. So that's gone. And then Andy, along with, let's say Chunk. Chunk wants to do this as well. He's going to play these 2 and that will get rid of this obstacle. Now, we are still at the location, which is cool because if we wanted to, we could go ahead and explore at this location and possibly get one of the treasures and be well on our way to finding all 5 treasures and finally finding One-Eyed Willie's ship. But there is something that we have to keep in mind, and that is whenever we draw back up at the end of the turn, we will get a certain number of cards. In a 4-player game, we would simply draw 1 card up. But if we don't use all 4 of our actions, we can actually each draw an extra card. Noticing that Andy here has no cards left, Chunk and Mouth only have 1 card, and Mikey has 2, we may want to not go and explore just so that we can draw that extra card up, meaning that Mikey will actually have 4 cards, Mouth and Chunk will have 3 each, and then Andy will be back up to 2. So that's a decision that you kind of have to make to see where you want to go after that. So maybe we want to, let's go ahead and explore and see how it works out. Boom! Oh, it was a booby trap. Well, that's not cool. This says add 2 obstacles to this location. And so we're going to add that there and that there. And then move the Goonies to location 1, like so. So let's say that we decided not to go and explore the skeleton organ. At this point, we would simply end. These cards would come away over here into the discard pile, and then each player would get to draw 2 cards. And so we each draw 2 cards. Remember, normally we'd only be drawing 1 card, but because we skipped our final turn, we're able to draw that extra card each. So now, at this point, we would go to the escalate phase of the turn, where we draw 1 card and we check the upper right-hand corner. If we draw this, that means we have to draw an encounter card and carry out its effects. So this is a Fratelli card. All players discard 1 card and place this in the encounter area. Now this is one of the 2 symbols that can actually have a negative effect for you. There is also these chevrons that can also be drawn. And if this is drawn, you would draw the top item card and place it at the corresponding location. So if this one were drawn, we would simply draw and then place it out at the location. Now it is possible that this symbol is another chevron, and if that's the case, we would actually continue drawing until another one. But since this one just says an encounter card, nothing happens further. So this one, the encounter is nasty in the case that it could draw a Fratelli card, but it's also good because you could draw a buddy card out of there as well. The escalate chevrons here are pretty nasty because you could continue drawing them, and those will fill up your locations with those 5 cards pretty quick. And that's generally how you play the Goonies. You would continue doing that until one of the game-ending conditions are met, whether you get 5 Fratellis on the board, you map and find all of the 5 treasures, or if you have 5 location cards, 5 obstacle cards at a single location, or if the last encounter card is drawn, then you'll also lose the game as well. So that is the Goonies adventure card game. As I said before, I'm a huge Goonies fan. I love the movie, totally enjoyed it a lot. Now, this game is not what I was expecting. I know it says adventure card game on the front, so I was already kind of unsure about that little tagline, because usually I'm not one for games that with such a meaty theme with it just being a card game. And I know that there's nothing wrong with card games, but usually they don't really spark my fancy. I was really excited about the IP, really excited about the designers, but that one just had me kind of lingering there for a little bit. I do have to say that this one was a disappointment for me. I did not enjoy it the way I thought I would. Now, did I overhype it in my mind? Maybe. Did I take too many things for granted? Maybe. Here are the reasons why it wasn't a connection for me. First of all, there was a pretty huge thematic disconnect for me, in that the different locations were all laid out in such a way that as you move from one to the next, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you were actually following the progression of the movie. The problem with that is that during the course of the game, you can flip-flop back and forth between these different locations, which to me just completely throws the IP on its tail. I actually did like the fact that there were no individual turns. When I first read that in the rulebook, I was like, huh, that's gonna be kind of weird, but it isn't. It actually works out really well, because it spawns a lot of conversation, and everybody seems like they are having an equal say in what goes on during the course of the turn. And it actually guards against, you know, sometimes in games where, especially in cooperative games, it comes around to your turn and you really can't do anything, or you don't feel like you can do anything of worth. This actually helps with that, because you can still be part of the conversation. You can still take part in all of the decision-making process, whether you used your ability or whether you contributed cards to the action or not. You're still part of the action taking place. And that's a cool thing. I did enjoy that about it. Another thing about the game that was kind of disappointing is, you know, first of all, I saw this box. I was like, hey, yeah, good box. Yeah, sure. It's just a card. I like the size of it. But then I opened it, and that's all it's in the game. Just these cards, these tiles, this little guy here, all of this space. Just didn't like that at all. And it seems like they made the box to fit the rule book. And that's the only reason that this box is the size that it is. That's kind of a letdown as well, because it's kind of deceptive. You're saying that you're giving me more game because of this big box than you actually are. So I didn't really like that either. Mechanically speaking, I think it's a sound game. It just isn't fun, and it just doesn't capture that Goonies feel that the movie gave you. You know, that pushing your luck and trying to stay away from the Fratellis and trying to do all that. It's all there mechanically speaking. Thematically speaking, though, it's void on a lot of those places. And that was a huge disappointment for me, because I really did want to enjoy the game. Some people don't like production stills as far as the cards and the pictures that are on them. I don't mind that so much. I actually like thinking back and remembering the movie, and having those production stills for the artwork actually helps doing that. So all in all, I think that it's a sound game, mechanically speaking. I don't think that it is a great game. It's just an okay game. But for me, that's a huge disappointment, because I really wanted to enjoy this game a lot, because I enjoy the movie so much and the IP. So I didn't. But hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? It's just the way it goes. So I'm sorry I couldn't endorse it a little bit more. I really wanted to. I love the Goonies, but I just can't. So that's it. We'll see you guys on the flip side.